That was all.
Very good. Check over the right side this time.
Hi, my name is Bernard. I'm a GP trainee, so although we might know nothing, we're certainly trying to fill any gaps in our ignorance, and we're learning a lot from the esteemed panel here tonight. Thank you all for your contributions in the video also. My question, I suppose, leads on from the previous question. I'm just wondering, I believe you have the screening trial going in Texas, or no, it's not a trial, but I suppose it effectively is. Is there any early data from that screening about the implications for cardiovascular health, or is there any outcomes from that? I know it might be early days yet, but do you have any information on that?
No, I think the outcomes are very clear. That if you have a disease, okay, let's just take, if you have a disease which we know to be calcification identifies the disease, the information is very clear that having a first heart attack, right, is that if we put you on a disease management program, because that's what you do, you go and have a heart attack, you put on a disease management program. The outcomes are better when you go on a disease management program. I mean, that's what people, if you reduce your inflammation, if you go on a better diet or whatever, that's the results indicate that from all of the studies. So having a situation that we're not going to implement something based on the fact that we know what the solution is that most people will take responsibility. If I said to anyone in the audience here, you're in the worst 25% of the score for your age, 75% of heart attacks are going to happen, and you need to do 2 or 3 things differently than what you're doing, particularly when you are classified currently as middle risk. Most people will go and do something about it, and they should have the choice. The calcification test is recommended for middle risk asymptomatic patients. It's in the guidelines and nobody knows it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your point, and I think I agree, knowledge is power, and it's what you do with that counts. But yeah. I'm just wondering, I suppose you don't really need a trial as such. You have actually implementation of this screening in Texas at the moment, and I'm just wondering, going back to that, is there any data to suggest that the outcomes are improved because of that screening?
Whatever you want to chip in there.
I think, I might just chip in. So that's relatively recently. So again, as I say, it's not a trial. It's made available a test which will identify people who have something they have to do. Following through and seeing how many take it, how many are identified, what proportion do something, and tracking hard endpoints over 10 or 15 years. None of that's happened. I'm not sure, David, this is, the Texas senator is recently.
Yeah, but it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't need to happen for it to happen.
I 100% agree it shouldn't need to happen, but just, it couldn't have happened anyway by now. So the 30 years that have been squandered and lost with the test, that's the problem. You know, they're only starting to really use it now. Now, I will just, Jeff, I'll get you in a moment, but there is one point, and I think Steve Nissen, I'm not sure it was in the short version, Steve Nissen said, sure, it'll tell us who has disease and who hasn't, which to an engineer, when I saw this stuff, is huge to identify the parts with the issue, and then you can apply fixes. But he said, sure, we can identify who has the disease, but it doesn't tell us how to fix it. Well, you're a preventative cardiologist, Steve, and you've just admitted in front of a camera that you won't use a test to identify the specific parts that have an issue because you're not bloody sure what you'll do about it. I thought that was beautiful.
But everybody in the world, this isn't just an Ireland issue, nobody in the world ever questioned him about it. No one ever said, Steve Nissen, how dare you say that? You've never demanded for Framingham. The Framingham system that's been there for 40 years, they've never demanded a randomised trial on it. They've never demanded it for a stress test. And nobody has ever questioned him because he is the Pope and he tells the rules and everyone follows it.
They've never done a randomised trial on cervical smears. They've never done a randomised trial on breast screening.
Yeah. The problem is the double standards to an independent, highly technical person are staggering, to be quite honest.
I just don't think that Steve Nissen truly knows a thing about primary prevention. I think he's a great watchdog in terms of overutilization of procedures. And when we look at the intervention that he recommends, it's statins and low-fat diets. And they've already been shown to fail. So when you consider that atherosclerosis is a metabolic disease, you start to think about nutrition differently, and low carb seems to make sense. Natural fats are metabolically neutral. It's a whole new ballgame.
Right. Thanks, Jeff.
Just a question there. I work as a nutritionist and I work in the area of early detection and prevention of heart disease, and I do a type of screening and nutrition. And things we've been saying tonight about applying nutrition, just briefly, it does work. I get great results, and I have sent people on for CT scans, and they have come back with serious outcomes as well. But I have 2 points. The first point is this lady's point here. We know prevention, we know the diet, we know the low carb, we know there's a huge area out there with inflammation, but it's going to take a long time for that to follow through to actually work as a preventative tool, which is what we want really. And the other question is, I thought, a little bit more simpler. I just want to know, is the research out there linking, we'll say, vitamin D deficiencies and vitamin K with increased calcification? Because in this part of the world, and I suppose in North America as well, and with the populations, vitamin D deficiency is big, and I'm just wondering, could we be doing more again on the preventative end, and is the data there for that?
I think it is.
Very good question. Well, I can, unless someone wants to take a D one. I gave a seminar on it last year.
Yeah.
So one of the vitamin D should really be at evolutionary levels. When athletes in the States, men and women, when they're exercising in the sun, they reach 40 plus nanograms, okay? So they reach evolutionary levels. Now the population is way, way down from that. One of the problems is that there's massive correlations between low vitamin D and heart disease, cancer, and many diseases. The only danger with that is you could argue that the people who got sick, their vitamin D status lowered, which is reverse causality. I don't agree with that, by the way, but that argument is made. I would say from all of the data out there, triangulating for vitamin K2 and calcification for vitamin D, which works in myriad pathways, and if people don't understand, vitamin D is created in your skin with the action of sunlight. Dietary, you're not going to get a whole lot unless you're eating a lot of natural fish, right? Wild fish. So it's created in your skin for a reason, because it partakes in a huge amount of biochemical reactions. And being low is a serious problem. But the sunlight also creates cholesterol sulfate, which ties into the cholesterol transport system. It also releases nitric acid, which gives you vasodilation and lower blood pressure. So the sun brings all of these enormously good things, but then we all fear it because of some data around skin cancer. And it's probably beyond scope here to get into that, but I'd say there's a huge body of evidence that the population is, on average, way lower on vitamin D levels than they should be, and that highly likely ties to part of our modern chronic disease milieu. But it probably needs a whole seminar in itself to get into it. I will send a link to the people, though, to my seminar.
Hello, Ivor. Can I take this home with me? This is brilliant. Just two things. I think it's timely as well to mention the work that Nina Teicholz has, her book, The Big Fat Surprise. For a lot of people who may not be following the science of it, she goes through all the studies on how we have come up with the low-fat hypothesis. And basically, it has been the cause, I think, of a lot of our ill health. And like vitamin A, D, E, and K are being carried by fat. If we have a low-fat diet, we're not getting those vitamins. As a general note, the Weston A. Price Foundation is an organisation that promotes the idea of bringing back fat into our diet, which is a non-profit nutrition organisation in America, and it is all over the world. But you were mentioning that foods that don't really have that much vitamin D. I think the Weston Price Foundation have analysed a lot of fat foods, and one of the highest foods that contain vitamin D include lard. It's a food we haven't eaten for a long time, but if we go back to these foods, we will be getting that vitamin D back into our systems. We definitely can't rely on it from the sunshine in Ireland. But grass-fed meats and animals that are not reared in captivity and all of those things, and looking back at how we look at the types of foods that we're actually eating is crucially important. The Weston A. Price Foundation are also doing a lot of work in terms of the role of vitamin A and D and K, the trilogy effect of those. There's a researcher called Chris Masterjohn doing a lot of work on that at the moment. Vitamin K2 has a very crucial role to play in calcification. Again, this isn't the venue for it, but some of the Irish cheeses that we've got tested, I'll make a plug for the Irish Little Milk Company. They got their vintage cheddar tested. It has really high levels of vitamin K2, which is a very promising result in terms of calcium, the calcium synthesis in the body. So there's a lot of interesting work going on in the background, and as well, Patricia, I see down here in terms of her work with the ketogenic kitchen. There's a lot more respect for you know, the high-fat hypothesis coming back.
Thanks very much for that, Anne. And I'll summarise. Yeah, Nina Teichel's book is superb, The Big Fat Surprise, and we'll send on links to everyone afterwards. Dr. Chris Masterjohn now has his PhD. He has superb work in this area, and pretty much everything what you've said, but the scope, we'll have to continue with the questions. Any nutritional questions for... Yeah. Oh yeah, here we are, nutrition.
I just wanted to ask a question. Can I just ask a quick question about K2 and about uncarboxylated GLA protein and uncarboxylated osteocalcin? When you were getting treated, were you looking at those scores? Were you looking to see if your GLA and osteocalcin were being carboxylated, or does that? I know it's kind of technical.
I'm very simple in terms of things. I listen to what people tell me to do because this is the evidence, okay? And K2 was huge for me. Vitamin D was huge because I'd nilled vitamin D. I'd actually nilled the score. So vitamin D, vitamin K2, I just did it what other people do. What it does, it's like I don't know, I'm not technical.
And I might answer that, yeah. So matrix GLA is extremely important. It's the mechanism by which K2 is crucial. And Weston A. Price discovered, and Chris Masterjohn has spoken at length. So probably beyond the scope here, but K2 is one of the top vitamins along with D.
I just started a startup company that makes vitamin K2 rich butter.
Oh, there you are.
So we're looking at
okay, is there one for everyone in the audience? Or?
What you need now is an Ulster fry with his butter.
Okay, let's go.
Question here.
So my question is, I fully accept the general population and the health benefits with the high-fat, low-carb diet. And I'm a convert myself. Ivor kind of knows my background. I transformed my own blood profiles by going on a high-fat diet. But I also work in a high-performance sport, and it's an area that it's not clear. In endurance sports, yes, the low-fat is the high-fat is proven you can work it. But in sports where you have explosiveness required, do athletes? Two-pronged questions. Do athletes burn off that carb quickly enough? And if they don't, and they have a prolonged 12-year sporting career, are they risking health problems by having such high carbohydrate, given that it's a very efficient fuel to burn? It's like rocket fuel, whereas the fat, I'd be like Geroid, I can go 8-9 hours on my mountain bike, no problem, but I am the general population. It's my athletes who would be the high performers.
Yeah, it's a great question because I train professional soccer players, and you would see that across all the different soccer clubs and professional sports and professional team sports, they have you either train high and play high in terms of carbohydrate intake, or you train low and you perform high in terms of carbohydrate intake. But the common denominator is that all field sports and that are intermittent in nature, like soccer or rugby or GAA sports, I don't know any nutritionists who don't play in a high carb sport, in a high carb situation. Their players are all field high carb around performance, and that builds up from between 40 hours before the game or 36 hours before a game. They're encouraged to increase their carbohydrate intake, and that's across any nutrition.
There's one outstanding player, world player in rugby, David Pocock of Australia, is low carber, and he's a brute.
Yeah. Well, see, the other side of the coin is you look at I advocate the high fat, high protein diet for the vast majority of the week, and even on game day. You know, what's high? If a guy really restricts his carbohydrates, what's high for him? If a guy had 0 carbohydrates on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you know.
That's the issue with David Pocock, because I'd be aware of that as well, but there's no data there because he doesn't release it. So it's
my daughter is not a low carber. She's should be going to Rio on the marathon, Lizzie Lee. But Lizzie and her club have always done their 20 milers fasting. So what they are getting is they're good fat burners and they don't hit the wall. But she runs high carb. But that's the one aspect of their training they do.
And what about the second part of that question with the health then?
I think that you are risking your health. There was something in the literature, but I haven't read the particular thing, but I've seen references to it of high CAC scores in marathon runners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Metabolizing a lot of glucose has potential prices, even if you're burning it off pretty well and not getting fat. But Peter Defty, I'll send on a link. Peter Defty is a peer-reviewed paper that came out with high-fat burning athletes, and they're achieving extraordinary things. And the peer review took 2 years because the results were so shocking that they found it difficult to sign off on there. And I'd send on those links. Quite interesting.
I think you can do both.
Where can you get the test done? And what do you ask? Given that your doctor doesn't know about it, where do you get the test done?
Really quick, you can Google it, but there's a clinic in Nace that's very good price, around 240. The Hermitage is around 320.
Matters 200. The IHGA.ie
Yes.
gives the lists of where you can get it done. Your doctor should be under huge obligation because it's recommended for asymptomatic middle risk patients. They don't know about it. So if they say no to you, you say, I could be suing you because if you get this wrong, you're the responsible. It's in the guidelines. You just tell them it's in the guidelines. It's €200 in the Matter Private and in the Avista.
And 200 in the Bond or in the Mercy in Cork.
We get Hugh down here. We got Pat here. Give it a good throw there. Don't be scared. Okay, we got a cube here. Quick questions. Last couple of questions, guys. We're going to have to wrap it up.
Thank you for a very informative section. And as far as the classification test goes, it strikes me as a no-brainer now that the information is presented. Can I just ask the question in relation to maybe, or referring to those who maybe won't, don't, are afraid to, or don't know how, or maybe can't afford it. How reliable is the triglyceride to HDL ratio measure as an indicator of risk?
It is actually very, very good. So it's actually a very good reflection of insulin resistance, to be honest. So it flags the elephant. And that's why in a study in Harvard they came out and they're quite shocked that the top quartile of triglyceride to HDL ratio had 16 times the heart attacks of the lowest. So your triglyceride to HDL ratio is of great value and you can calculate it from your cholesterol panel. The LDL ain't going to tell you anything unless you understand how to triangulate all the data. Total won't mean much. But HDL triglyceride ratio is huge. The ideal would be to drink 75 grams glucose and 2 hours later get a blood draw for insulin, and that's going to stomp all over every test. But we can maybe send out some details on that, but good point. Jeff, quick word on triglyceride over HDL ratio?
Yeah, the original Framingham studies actually was looking at HDL.
Yeah.
It's surprising, but they didn't have medication for it.
The reason Framingham saw a few things, and one of the things, as Jeff said, is they saw HDL was hugely important, but after decades failing to get drugs to change it successfully, they're just not interested. Whereas LDL is simple, so the drug makes it go down and everyone's happy. Though as David says, there's a different mechanism going on.
But saturated fat, the Ulster fry makes it go up.
The HDL goes up. Your triglyceride to HDL ratio, the most important one for your panel, will improve with a low carb diet. Because your trigs will drop because you're not making fats in your liver from all that glucose, which you shouldn't be eating. And your HDL will tend to go up. So together the ratio really moves. Okay.
Quality of lipoprotein.
It tells you the quality of the bolts.
Just two quick points. Well, maybe not that quick, but as succinct as I can make them. Science, I think, can do so much better for itself if it opens its data to public scrutiny, so that everybody can go and look at that data and can test that these are the conclusions of veracity. You know, it's open to the worst kind of mendacity that Mark Twain described as lies, damn lies, and statistics, and bias, and that will sort the bias part of it. So I do think that the other question is for the two guys up on my left at the back who are GP trainees, and for Jeff Gerber, is that I want to ask a question. which goes back to the problem. I'm wondering, is medical education at the root of a lot of our problems? From this, wait, just hold this thought for a second. What's the balance of nutrition and pharmacology, and the balance of prevention and intervention or treatment in medical education? So I wonder philosophically, but I wonder where it's funded, and I wonder to that extent. I don't think we have a health care system. I'm concerned that we have a disease treatment industry, and they're vastly different, and it starts at education. I'd really like to hear what Jeffrey and the two GPs are saying, and any other doctor.
So, I like to say that our system is that of sick care. It's not a system based on well care. When I went to medical school back in the 80s, we like to joke that my education was funded by the big pharmaceutical industry. But, understand that I think that modern medicine is wonderful, and we still need to partner with it, and we don't want to turn away from it and bring nutrition into it. Honestly, back then in the 80s, and it's laughable today, young doctors get perhaps a day or less of true prevention education. They learn very little bit about nutrition, and it's just still remains a huge problem.
It is enormous, and I think Jeff, since we interviewed Kraft, Jeff's doing a lot more insulin assays now, and he's out the door with diabetics who are coming in as non-diabetic from other doctors. So the doctors have no idea how to properly measure for diabetes. So I think he had a guy, he shouldn't be over 40 at 2 hours after glucose load. He got a guy the other day that was 530 of insulin. That's how much, and the previous doctor had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally agree with our silent counterpart, but just absolutely, I mean, it doesn't feature in undergraduate.
Or metabolic disease, they don't even check for insulin. Even today, we have so many people that come to the office who have heart disease, and then I find out they're diabetic. It's crazy.
A friend of ours, good friend, Dr. Theodore Nyman, on the West Coast, he was an engineer aeronautical turned doctor. He's 20 years practicing, right? And he said basically all my Indian patients are diabetic. No, only a few percent would fail a diabetes test, the standard one, like I referred to earlier. He said they're all diabetic. You just look at their trig over HDL. They pop out 7 or 10 pounds weight in their stomach. They don't put it on elsewhere genetically, and bam, they're diabetic. He's swimming in diabetics, but no one's measuring for the real test for diabetes.
Sure, absolutely, no, and 100%. But just to get back to my point, it's not covered in our medical education, and it should be. I guess that's why we're here. We're trying to learn more about it because we see it every day in the consultation room. We don't just see cardiovascular disease. We see a whole host of things, particularly in GP. We see from obesity to cardiovascular disease to associated cancer risks. We're going to be swamped with this stuff. And we do need to do something about it.
I attended a note by Tim, seminar by Tim Noakes was here. I attended my friend Harry. And basically what he said was that they teach one framework in med school. Yep. And that's it, and they stick to that. They should be teaching the 4 frameworks and fight for and against each of those frameworks.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, to mention the food pyramid, I mean, lots of people have been ragging on the food pyramid, and rightly so, but that is still current practice in every dietetics department in HC hospitals.
But it's completely unconscionable. I mean, it's terrible. But another thing too that's important is to consider that the metabolic syndrome or the insulin resistance syndrome is one thing. Like you get somebody in, you say, I must control this blood pressure. If you control this metabolic syndrome, usually the blood pressure will go away. Not always, but usually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's what I see as our position as GPs who do manage the various trades. We should be learning more about these things.
It's great you're here.
So that's what
it's great.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you guys are the future.
I really feel, being a nutritionist, I also work with GPs in Galway. That's where I'm based half the time, and I think it's a matter of collaboration between all these different modalities, bringing like exercise and movement into it, bringing in some type of parasympathetic support like yoga or meditation. Mindfulness is a buzzword. The nutrition, the doctor, the consultant. There's all these modalities that are extremely well trained, and it's not just down to one professional.
Yeah, for sure.